Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to have you here. I hope you enjoyed the keynote, and we got some good stuff for you now and later on this afternoon with devs on stage. So this talk is GOAT Analytics, the greatest of all time analytics. That's not the greatest of all time of all analytics. It's the greatest about all the time analytics. So we're going to talk about time and date. And why do you want to know this? What I'm going to try to do is teach you, get you familiar with the concepts, the most important concepts around date and time, the most useful tools to use, so that you can be more efficient, make fewer mistakes, and go where you want to go. And I'll give a couple of examples of how you might do some things. You may have seen some before, you may not. I hope you learned something along the way. My name's Austin Dahl. I come up through an engineering background, a software engineer. I am the sort of prototypical, nerdy, introverted geek. And so my sweet spot's about 4 people. When I came to visit this room on Saturday, I was like, this is way bigger than my sweet spot. Okay, the title is GOAT Analytics. They talk about this on the sports shows all the time, so let's just get it out of the way. Who is the greatest of all time? It is not Muhammad Ali. It is not Michael Jordan. It's not Wayne Gretzky. The greatest of all time is Serena Williams. Okay, debate over, end of story. Time to do some Tableau. So, as I said, the first half of the talk, tools, things I would like you to know. You can be more fluent. Second half of the talk, some examples, putting those tools to use. My first topic is date parts and date truncations. They are a little confusing. I want to illustrate the differences. If you pay attention, you will watch me screw up because they are slightly confusing. So parts are the elements in a date hierarchy. We got quarters, days, weeks, even combos of them. Here's an example. My hour is in green there, 2 a.m. The month is in pink, August. So those are all parts. Anyone recognize this date and time? Nobody? Any sci-fi fans out there? Oh, you do. What was it? Judgment Day. Yeah, this is the date and time that Skynet became self-aware. All right. So, I'm the software geek, introverted. I like the sci-fi stuff, okay? So when you're choosing a date part or a date trunk, you right-click on the pill, you get a big long list. The parts are on top, the trunks are underneath, and exact is below that. I will do now a demo of parts from a movie database. So this database is the top grossing movies over a long period of time. So I will drag a number of records, 2 rows, and I see I've got about 1,800 of them. And I'll grab the theatrical release and put it on columns. And the default is the date part for a year. But my question is, what is the most popular time to release a movie? So what month? So I'm going to grab the date part for month by right-clicking and choosing month. Any guesses out there? Summer. Really good guess. Wrong. Summer, July and November are sort of tied for second and third. December. So that's what the data says for the top grossing movies. How about what day of the week? Any guesses there? Louder, please. Friday? Friday, Monday, Friday, totally Friday. Okay? That's a couple examples of using date parts. All right, now date truncations. So unlike parts, date truncations are a rounding operation. They don't give you sort of a number or a part back, they give you another date back, or date and time. So if you're a scientist out there, it's like removing significant digits. And they preserve the top part. So I've got a date there, date and time, and if I start doing truncations, I just start dropping all those things, all the parts on the right. So here's a few examples. The top one here, November 12th, 1955, at 6:38 p.m. If I truncate to year, I get 1955. On the second example, we've got a 1985 date. If we truncate to quarter, it's Q4 of 1985. It's not Q4, it's Q4 of 1985. And the third one, October 21st, 2015, 7:28. If we truncate to month, we get October of 2015. Make sense? Anyone recognize these dates? Back to the Future. You guys over here are with me. Right, Back to the Future. This is when Marty McFly was flying all back in time and everything like that. And the right side is me in a DeLorean in front of my office with a hoverboard. I have a colleague that has a DeLorean, and he parked it in front of our office, and I got in and we took pictures. Okay, time for a game. Quiz time. We will play part or trunk. Okay? In Seattle, November is the rainiest month. What am I talking about, part or trunk? Part. Easy. Part. And because it's part because I'm talking about every single November in Seattle is rainy. I am from Seattle. Seattle's next month. I'm not exactly looking forward to it. Next one, the best music is from the 80s. Leroy in the back was generous to play some Earth, Wind & Fire to get you in the mood for this. So, part or trunk? Trunk. Yeah, I say trunk because the 1980s are implied. Because when I'm saying the best music is from the 80s, I'm not really talking about the 1780s and the 1680s and the 1880s all put together. We're talking about the 1980s. We all know the best music was the 1980s. 2017 has been the hottest year on record. Part or trunk? 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 Yeah, I'm going to say this is hard. This is like Run DMC said. It's tricky, 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 right? I'm going to say trunkish. But years are really, parts and trunks on years are almost the same thing. They're very similar, so it's confusing. I say trunk because if I think about if there's a date, if there's a part on a year, you might be thinking about which calendar you might be using. I'm more thinking about the whole year at a time, so I say trunk. All right, next one, I joined Tableau on June 19th, 2006. Part or trunk? I heard trunk from the front row. Yeah, that's what I say. I showed up at a certain time, like 9 a.m., but it was a date. And this is actually true. This is officially known as old fart. Ha! Thank you for laughing. My birthday is on March 9th. Part or trunk? Part. You guys are good. Yeah, so my birthday happens every year on March 9th. So that's a part. Get it? All right, behavioral differences. Parts by default are discrete. Trunks are continuous by default. And when you have discrete things and you drill down, you get more pills. If you have continuous things, you drill down, you get a replacement. Lines get broken on discrete things, and they tend not to on continuous things. So I will show you a little difference, a difference here, the behavioral differences. I've got the year part over the number of records. This is sample superstore, our example thing. And when I drill down to quarter, I get another pill, right? And the things are split, the headers. I've got headers on top, headers on bottom. If I had started out with the year as a trunk, notice first it's wider. Continuous things take up the whole thing, hold all your space. And when I drill down, the lines aren't broken, I have a single pane, the headers are down at the bottom. So that's a few of the differences. Oh, cool. Perfect pivot. I learned this term from Mark Reeder, one of our old, he's like, he trains our Jedis, he's like Yoda, except he's like 6'9". He's not green either. So perfect pivot is, the concept is that you can use these parts in any way, or in multiple ways. So when I drill down, I'm going to change this to month, I believe. I like months better. A lot of systems are used to seeing you drill down into something and those things are locked. Month is always nested in year. But it doesn't have to be. So the perfect pivot is when you can move it around wherever you want. So I'll switch the order on columns of month and year, and then I can look like at each February to see how if they're going up or down, right, over the years. I can put it across on columns or on rows, right? I can pivot it that way. I can pivot, I can put them on top of each other on color, right? Perfect pivot. When you get these parts, you can move them all around, do all kinds of great things. This is sort of basic Tableau stuff, but it's applicable to parts. Oh, you know what? Before I do this, I was reading a blog by one of the guys on from InfoWorks, I believe, and he took parts and he built the calendar, right? This is years and months and week number. I hid the week number for a second. Those are all on rows. And columns, I have the week day, and then the date part for day is on the label. And there's an extra sort of bonus. I changed the default, instead of being automatic, I made it square. I put color on, I put sales on color so I can get a little more information off a calendar. Now, you could take that sort of thing and using actions, and you can make yourself like a master detail where you have information about like where your sales are when they're happening, and when you click on those things, then you can get the details. And that's a little bit nicer UI, or has a little more information than your standard UI for a calendar picker. So you can build one of these things pretty simple. I bet you most people could do it in about 5 or 10 minutes. If you're super skilled, in probably 2.5. So there's some ideas about how that works. Let's go to the next section. All right, continuous and discrete. I talked about the defaults, what's continuous and discrete, but that's just the defaults. You can change your mind. And if you want to change your mind, again, right-click on your date pill, go down close to the end, and you'll be able to choose between discrete and continuous. I'll give you a little example. And most of it is straightforward, and one of them will probably surprise a few people. So this is a part. It is by default discrete. I'm going to duplicate this and change to a trunk. And actually, I'll set that back up over here where I'll drill down to, I think quarters will do. Let's do months. Okay. Part is default discrete. Trunk is by default continuous. If I change the default, let's bring this down to month 2, so we're showing the same one. If I change the default right-click, change the default continuous to discrete. There's a little difference there. I'm getting every single point. It's not necessarily laid out proportionally. The labels are a little different. If I do another one, I'll show you exact as well. Let's grab this one and duplicate it. Exact is usually continuous by default. And if I change that to discrete, right, I get a big long list of stuff. Okay? So that was, I did the trunk. Now, what happens if I start changing the parts to continuous? So if I change the month to continuous, not a lot changed. Took up a little more space in terms of width. Down the bottom, the names of the things changed to numbers. And if I do the next one, I'm pretty sure I'm going to confuse a bunch of people. You can't nest continuous pills. So this is giving me two vises, one by months and one by years. It's a little unexpected. Now you've seen it. You won't be surprised next time you do that. Okay? I think I just did this. Okay, functions. There's a few functions about dates and parts, dates and times that are really useful. I want to get you exposed to them, see how they're used, so you know what the tools are available to you, so you can go do your vises and do your analysis quickly. The first set, date part and date trunc, are analogous to what I was just talking about of when you right-click and you choose. You say what part you want, and then you put your date field in, and it gives you that. Now, part gives you numbers, and trunc gives you full dates back. Pretty straightforward. Pro tip, if you do not know how to type this stuff, put it on a shelf, choose what you want, drag it into your calculation editor, and it'll just give you the right formula for it. If you want to do date arithmetic, there's a couple different ways. There's functions, date add and date diff. Add, you say what's the unit you want to add it by, and then you give it a number. I've got a constant here, but you use something else. So the first one is 3 months after the order date, and the second one is 2 days before. A date diff is similar. It takes what part, but when you want, what difference do you want? And you give the two. You get the start and the end. So that fourth one is essentially saying, since it's the order date and today, that's how long has it been, how many days. The date diffs and date adds will do a truncation, sort of. They'll do rounding for you. They give you things on the exact dates. And if you do straight arithmetic, you keep the fractional portions. Databases tend to store their dates as, in the integer portion, the number of days, and in the fractional portion, the portion of the day. So if keeping track of those fractions is important to you, do that stuff on the bottom. And I tend to work on things where I actually I'm much more happy when things are aligned to dates. So I tend to use the ones on the top for most of my daily analytics. But again, I'm doing things on the day level. We don't use stopwatches to time our developers at Tableau. A couple more useful functions, now and today. So now is the date and time version, and today is just a trunk of that. A date parse is super useful for cleanup. If you've got date coming in at a funky format, you can say this is what the format is. Or if you're putting things together in calculations and then putting them out to dates. That's useful there. A date name is like date part and date trunc, except it gives, instead of giving you the number, it's like date part, instead it gives you the name instead of the number. All right, that was the first half. And lo and behold, we're about halfway through. All right, so I'm going to do some building some analytic vizzes. I hope you get some new ideas about this. The first one is straightforward. Most people deal with date and time in their databases, and you want to know when something happened and how long it took. So it's applicable to a bunch of different industries. I'll give you a simple example. All right, suppose I want to know for all my customers, when did they order and how long did those orders take? I want to see that. So I'll grab my customer name and I'll put it on rows. And I'll grab the order date and put it on columns. I'm going to change that to exact date by right-clicking, going down the big long drop-down, and saying exact date. And now I can see when my customers ordered. That's fairly straightforward. The next thing I'm going to do is show how long. I'm going to double-click in the marks card and start typing. So I want the duration. The duration is going to be the date diff in days from my order date to my ship date. Oh, one parenthesis. And then I'll click on the little doohickey to the left of the pill. That's the official word, doohickey. And I change that to size, and now I can see I got a Gantt chart showing not only when it happened, but how long, if there's overlaps. Okay. But when I looked at this data set a little bit when I first did this, I'm like, hey, there's a mistake here. I'm a little familiar with this data set, and I actually know there was no order that took more than 7 days to ship. And yet I see right at the beginning there's something that's 20 days. I bet you somebody in this audience has a guess about what's going wrong. Say it loud. Summing all the date diffs. Exactly. Right. If I look at my data, I'm going to go back down to the lower left corner to look at my data source. You can see those first two rows are from the same order, two different items in the same order. So if I look at the date diff, and they get aggregated up to the day, right? It's going to sum them. It's going to say, well, it took 3 days to ship the first one, 3 days to ship the second one, so it must take 6 days. But they invented this really cool thing called a box. You put both things in the same box and ship at the same time. So the fix is to just change the sum. And I will say max. And now I can see that the numbers now look right. Now, if I wanted to switch this viz and not look at how my customers were getting the orders and getting shipped, when they're happening, if I thought, well, let's take a look at my product. From the left side, I will drag out subcategory, place it right on top of customer, replace that, and now I can see when my products were ordered and shipped. And this is getting a little dense. Give me a good idea, but for those binders, these are getting ordered quite a bit. I can't quite see the data. So another technique, which is similar to a Gantt chart, is to change to color. And I can see them all, and they're not necessarily all over each other at that point. I don't like this color palette so much, because it's not really telling me what the long ones and the short ones very easily. So I will double-click on the legend, so let me edit the color palette. And if I do blue and orange, and let's say that blue is good and orange is long, I'll reverse that. And then I can kind of see, oh, it's much more easy to see what's going on. It's mostly orange. And I can even do another further analysis by grabbing the ship date and dropping it on columns. And I can see that my first class and my same day, that's mostly blue. That's pretty good. Where I got the orange in my standard class, a little bit in second class, okay, my business seems to be going well. All right, this next one is getting more difficult, getting more tricky. So if I know things, when things were shipped, when they're ordered and when they're shipped, there's sort of a lag time. So I'm kind of interested in figuring out how many open orders I have at any given time. And it's not tracked explicitly in the database, but it's an interesting question. And there's a few different ways to do it. And I'm going to walk through one of them. And I'll walk through the steps to sort of get through the thinking. So I'll start out, and I'm just showing my orders. And I've got them organized by week. And you can see all the orders over the week. And what I could also do to get at this question a little bit is to say, well, I'll put ship date from the left. I'll bring it over to the columns next to order, and I want to change that to match the time for the aggregation I have for orders. I'll change that to week number, and I do want to get them to say order and ship. And what else do I want to do here? I'm going to put different colors on them. I'm starting to get a sense of how they're going, and I can even lay these on top of each other by doing a dual axis. And I'll have to thank Tableau for putting the number of records on color, as I don't really want that. Excuse me. And when I line these things up by saying synchronize axis, and that is a right click on the axis, and there's a synchronized axis. Now I've got these lined up. And I can see that there's the date like September 7th, there was 97 orders, a lot more orders than shipping date, and then later on I had more shipped than ordered, right? So I'm getting tantalizingly close to answering this question, but it's not quite there yet. Because the thing that I really want is a measure to calculate that difference between those things. And these are really two tables organized very differently. I just happen to put them on top of each other. All right, so the idea to do this next part is like, well, if I had a whole nother table where I could take the ship dates and join them with the order dates that I have, then I could do something, like I could do a blend. That's the big idea where I'm going. So I actually do have another table that has ship dates. It's the very table that I'm working on. But I want to make that blend work. So I will walk you through the couple of steps to get there. And before I go, I'm going to capture what I did here before by just duplicating the worksheet. So I will take my Superstore data, and I'm going to duplicate that. So I've got a second one. And what I want to do to make it easy for myself instead of edit relationships dialog, I just want the order date and the ship date from the duplicated one to match the order date. So I'll take the order date field, rename it to something else, original, and then I will also rename ship date to order date. And finally, I will, on the secondary here, the second one, I'm going to rename, and I renamed ship date to order date so that they'll match. And I'm going to rename the number of records here because I would get very confused and already have in my practices, my practice talks, if I don't rename this to shipped items. Okay. I'm going to undo this dual axis for a moment. And now I'm just talking about order date. So here's my original, and here's my secondary, and you can see by that little lock icon, it's going to blend on order date. And remember that order date is not really the order date, it's the ship date. So when I drag out shipped items, I can see those are the things that are shipped on those dates. And now I've got two measures. I'm getting very close to doing calculation between them to get where I want to go. Now, I am the author of this story, and I know there is a big pitfall going on here that I want to talk to you about, and it has to do with sparse data. So in order to show the next step, I'm going to filter it down to show you just one part where there's not as much data. So I'll grab the subcategory and look at copiers. There's not a lot of data there. So if I double click that, I keep copiers. All right. Now I see that I look at all those things and there are, I'm sorry, I did the wrong thing and I knew I did it wrong. I'm going to back up. I started dragging out subcategory from my secondary, and what I really wanted to do was drag it out from my primary. I am so glad I caught that in my practice. All right. So if I look at all these shipped orders, I can see that I've shipped 68 copiers. I'm sorry, I've ordered 68 copiers, and how many have I shipped? Sorry, it said 46 and it just went away. I'll do that, I'll drag it out again. 46. Ordered 68, shipped 46. There's something going wrong here because in my original data, every single row had an order date, ship date. So something's getting lost. The ships are being undercounted. Anyone want to, some of you must know why. Guesses? Excuse me? Right number of days? Yeah, you're really close. Right. A blend is a post-aggregate left join. If I had my days, or my order days, and I had my ship days, and they lined up, it's perfect. When it's really, really dense, I'm not going to have problems. But what happens if some of those go away? Some of my order days are not there, and I have ship days for that. And if I do a left join, which is what a blend is, these ones do not get included. I suspect that's what's happening. In fact, I pretty much know it, but I want to teach it to you. How am I going to get around this? There's a very complex topic called densification within Tableau, and I want to show you how you can use it a little bit to get over this problem. So what densification is that it's for a well-known domain like times and dates, you can say, fill in the missing values. So if you say, fill in the missing values, and you also say, I really need to use these values, if you do those two things, you can get data in the tables and the joins all work. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that. So the first step is to say, show the missing values, and I will do that by right-clicking on the date field and say, show missing values. And notice how nothing changed, because you need to do two things. The second thing you need to do is to demonstrate a need that you need to look up these missing values. Because here's why. If we didn't do that and someone does this sort of a little bit by mistake and you generate a huge number of things. If you've got a big date range, you start to generate dates all over the place. It can blow up. We take your server down. That's no fun. So we only do it if you said, yeah, I see it and I need to use it. So when do you need to use it? The simplest way I have found is to use a table calc, something like difference from or running total, because they need to look at all those intermediate values. Okay, so now I'm going to change the first measure here from whatever it is right now, it's the sum of the number of records, to a running total. And watch what happens. Watch what happens to the top pane, and watch what happens to the number of marks. Way more marks, right? 247. It goes up like you'd expect a running total to, but all those places where there was no orders on copiers, it's keeping it around. We're doing densification. Now, if I do the same thing for the number of shipped items, right-click, change my aggregation to, or change the add a table calc, running total, I can see my running total there. That's 68, that's 68. The things that were missing from my join are now back, or I've got them. And just to prove this to you, if I go back to the pill and say, I don't want to show missing values, right? It's still not enough because that one is 46. So you need to do both of those things. This is another run DMC thing. This is tricky, tricky, tricky. Okay, now I'm getting very close. I've got this two measures, and if I can do a calculation between them, and I know that I haven't missed anything up. So, what is my inventory? Well, if I took the total number of things that I've ever got ordered up till now, and subtract the total number of things that have ever been shipped, that is my current inventory, right? Let's do it. So I'm going to double-click right in the rows shelf. I drag that first one in there, and I do minus the second one, and I get it. That's the thing that I'm after, right down there. This is the things. Hey, I've gotten 2 more orders than I got shipped, and then I had some more shipped, and I fixed it. So I will get rid of these things that I don't need anymore, and I can see how that goes. I can see what I've done for copiers. And in fact, if I take the filter out, I can see how I've got across all my product line. And this calculation works at that when you break it down by subcategory, or even if you do the whole thing. Okay, so that is one way to find out how many open orders do I have at any given time using a blend and some table calcs. All right. When your data wasn't even organized that way. The next thing, I believe, is what I think is the greatest LOD calc of all time, or the greatest LOD calc. And the reason I like it so much is that it's a building block for all kinds of other things. So there's the example on the screen. It's like doing the first occurrence of something. So you do the fixed, and then whatever that thing is you want the first occurrence of, the order, and then you put your date field with a min. Now if you wanted the last occurrence, you'd use max. So let's go play with that. Let's create a calculated field. So I right-click on my dimensions, that little chevron, create a calculated field. I'm going to call it first customer order date. And it is, I'm going to use that formula, fixed on customer ID, and take the min of the order date. I'm done. And I've got a new date field there. And now I'm going to take that new date field and I'm going to do cohort analysis with it. So if I take that date field that I just created and put it on color, I can see my cohorts of where they bought, when they first bought. So I'll change the sort on this by right-clicking and instead of looking at sort, I want to just reverse it because I like the 2014 at the bottom. So that's just like all my all how many orders have been taken, lot of 2014, and I can even start using the order date and look at it over time. I'm going to switch it over to bars so it's a little more visible. And I can see that 2014 cohort, the people who first bought in 2014 were a super part of my business even 3 years later. So I'm using that cohort one way and I'm doing time analysis with another way. I wonder if there's any difference of people who bought with Q1 or Q2 or Q3. Like that's another part I could use. Are they going to be special in any way? It's really easy to look. Let's see. Q1. Are my Q1s better than my Q4s? Or nope. That doesn't seem to make a difference. But this cohort, this year cohort, is super important. So that's a simple way to do cohort analysis with an LOD calc. And the next thing I'll do is that I will take that LOD calc and do, I'll do a tenure calculation. So I'll click on that chevron again, create a calculated field. I want to call it tenure in months. And that is simply the difference, the date difference in months between the first order, customer first order, and the order date. Look at my first order, like how long has it been? Actually, that's not right. Not order date, that's a mistake. And today. How long has it been since their first order? So I'll take a new sheet, get rid of the stuff that I do not need. I've got number of records. Grab my new field, put it on columns, and I'll change back to automatic, and it'll give me one single dot. Now if I look at my customers, by putting customer name on labels, I can see this is the sort of distribution of my customers by tenure. I'm going to turn the complexity crank a little bit further. And taking tenure, and since I want to put those into groups. So if I create a bin on that, it's suggesting bins of 3.9, but I just want bins of 3 months. Falls nicely on the quarters. I've created another dimension. I'll duplicate this so I can go forward. Get rid of that. Get rid of the measure for tenure and put up the bin for tenure. And now I don't need my customer name anymore. And now I can see it's sort of a histogram. So I had that LOD calc. I added another calculation. I built a bin on top of that to give me another dimension to do another step of analysis, a different kind of cohort analysis. Okay, the third one, where's the fourth? The next one that I want to do based on this LOD calc is customer acquisition. And to do that, I'm just going to create another field. I'll ask it, is first order. And my calculation is going to be first customer order equals order date. So this is true when the first customer first bought it and false everywhere else. I'll start with a new sheet. I'll get rid of that for a second. And I will put order date. This is a viz we've seen before, order date. Let's go all the way to months. And then I will filter it by this is first order to say, only show me my customer when I got a new customer. So that's telling me when I got a new customer. If I change the number of records to a running total, right-click, select running total from the quick calcs, and I can see there's this inflection point. So this is all the customers I'm acquiring. I get an inflection point right here at the end of 2014. Something's going odd. I'm not acquiring more new customers at the same rate I was. We sort of saw this earlier in the presentation. And now I can ask these questions. Is this happening all over the place? Is it happening for my whole product line? And those questions are really, really simple to answer. So is it happening all over the place? I'll grab region. I'll put that on color. Is it happening all over the place? Yes. Answer in about half a second. Is it happening on all my product line? Category. Replace region with category. Yes. It's happening across my product line too. And I could drill down into this stuff. So I don't know what's really causing this, but yeah, it's happening everywhere. It's happening with the whole product line. Maybe I have an issue about how I'm acquiring customers. So something to go work on. That is the LOD, the greatest LOD, in my opinion. All right, the last thing I'll do is not nearly as tricky, but it's interesting, I think. There's certain kinds of calculations for which sum and average are not good. And I give a few examples. But my favorite is bank account. Like if I thought, like, how much money do I have in a month? If I summed all the daily balances and that's how much money I actually had in the month, whoops, then I would probably blow my budget. So there's a nifty calculation to get you to take care of this, and it's essentially if this date is the last date. So if, and I have an LOD expression for it, give me the last one. Then you put your measure in. Otherwise, you don't do it. It becomes null. It doesn't show up. Let me show you that. That is inventory. Okay, I could type this in, or I could show you how I typed it. So let's go to this one, and if I hover over that, you can see that I've typed this. I'm using order date, I'm using quantity. So if my order date is the include of the max order date, then I'm going to use quantity. When I build that, and I build 3 different vises, and at 3 different levels of detail, year, quarter, and month, I can see that my end of the year is the same as the end of the quarter, which is the same as December. And similarly, if I look at, let's look down here, Q3 2015, the month should be the same. That's 33. In fact, there it is right there, September 33. So that's a calculation that's used for all kinds of things that are non-cumulative, that want to remember what they were last. Right, that was the last thing I was going to show you. And we're doing well on time. So I will open it up for questions. I think there's a microphone over here. And I will give it my best shot if you have any. And if you want to go long, I have not had lunch. So anyone wants to join me for lunch, I'm happy to answer further questions there. But go ahead and go to the microphone if you have questions.
Can you show that calculation again?
This one?
Yeah.
Take your phone out. What is the include? Why is the include there? Include is, I'm doing include and I'm not even putting a dimension in there. It's just like I want an LOD. Don't use fix, use include. Yeah, usually you say include in a dimension, but if you leave one out, it doesn't include anything extra. So it just gives you the LOD. So it's really giving me a max of all those things. Question, yes?
Yeah, I have a question about counting the open items. Could you use the pivot feature when you're bringing in the data?
Counting open items, could I use the pivot feature like in the data prep
Like if you
portion?
choose open and close date fields and then pivot on those, it should duplicate
I think
the
that would be
records.
another way to do it. There's many ways to do it. I think, yeah, you could do that. When you do those pivot operations, I caution you in that other measures get duplicated. So be careful.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I wanted to get your input on that.
And there's a third way too, which is to do a real join and just generally have a database of dates for every date, and then you join in your opens and you join in your ships, and you can do it that way. Especially if you have multi-stage things. That's way more complex, and I didn't have time for that. But so yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I thought the point of the LOD calc was to partition by something, right, by customer ID or category or something. But after seeing this, it looks like maybe it's not the case. So could you explain maybe what's going on here with this LOD calc? Why do you need it since you're not partitioning?
So it's not always about partitioning. So they're very, very flexible. They're more of a Swiss Army knife. So there is things that is partitioning. Maybe if I thought about it a little bit, it's partitioning by the max date for whatever the aggregation is on the viz. So and basically that's saying, well, if the date I have is the max date in that partition, so when I go back to the viz here, right, the top one, the max date is at the very end, it's the last year, and the other ones, there's separate panes, and so the max date is, so that, I can sort of wave my hands and say, that's the partitioning that's going on there. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
The second part of my question, if you don't mind, is could you create one calculated field of just the LOD expression and then use other calc fields to reference that? You know what I mean?
All right, so if I get the question right. So when I did that LOD expression, the first occurrence, and then I did other things off of that, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so suppose you take one, you create one field and just name it max order date, right? And then just have that be the LOD expression.
Yeah.
And then when you want your other measure, just reference the original field.
Yes, you can do that.
You can do that.
I did a mix of typing and naming fields on the whole thing. So either way is good. For the one-off ones, I'm always typing.
Yeah.
And once I like it, I save it.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. Just actually, so what else? A couple of plugs for this session is repeated later on. There is an advanced time thing by Bethany Lyons, Bethany Lyons. She is super genius. So if this was not enough for you, go here, listen to Bethany or hear the repeats. Mark is a very good source of stuff, and he's going to do more than just time. I think this other session should be interesting, have some tips about time, although I think it's happening right now, so look for the recording. If you liked the session, please say so. If you didn't like the session, please say so and tell me why. I'll fix it next time. And if anyone else has other questions, you can come up and talk with me.